You might not appreciate this reminder, but tax season is upon us. We're not yet to the last minute, so some of you can continue to procrastinate. Probably goes the way of if you expect money back, you're more eager to do it. And if you expect to pay, then you would rather do it another day. Even for those who understand the necessity of taxes, I know that's a hard thing for some people to say. There's a need for them. Even as we understand that need, it's still a hard subject. America has a bit of a history when it comes to taxation. If you've studied colonial history, you would know that the Boston Tea Party was a bit of a defining moment for the colonies as the relationship between Great Britain and the colonies was deteriorating. And so that event, the Boston Tea Party, took place on December 16th, 1773. And it really symbolically showed the spirit that was developing in North America and in the colonies towards Britain. That rebellion was not crushed, it was instead victorious, and we're here today, citizens of a different nation. But that was hardly the first time that people in the history of the world rebelled against taxes. A couple thousand years ago in AD 6, when Judea first came under the direct rule of the Roman Empire, a man named Judas of Galilee revolted against the Romans. He had no such success as our forebears did. He was crushed, but his actions are part of what gave Israel the reputation of being rather rebellious and difficult. And certainly by the time that Jesus is around, the issue of taxes in Israel hasn't gone away. But as we enter back into the book of Mark, we see people asking Jesus about taxes. I don't think taxes are the real issue in our passage, verses 13 through 17, but that's at least the question they ask him. And it's an inflammatory issue. Things can get ugly very quickly, depending on how Jesus answers their question. But they're not really looking for an answer that they would submit to. They have something else in mind. So please listen as I read Mark 12, 13 to 17, and let's see what happens in this event, and then I'll try to help us review just a little bit to remember the context in Mark that we're entering into once again. Mark 12, verse 13. And they sent to him some of the Pharisees and some of the Herodians to trap him in his talk. And they came and said to him, Teacher, we know that you are true and do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances, but truly teach the way of God. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay them or should we not? But knowing their hypocrisy, he said to them, Why put me to the test? Bring me a denarius and let me look at it. And they brought one, and he said to them, Whose likeness and inscription is this? They said to him, Caesar's. Jesus said to them, Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And they marveled at him. How do they respond? They respond with amazement. But if we go back a little bit further, we see that this question that they bring to him is one that is a result of Jesus' interaction with the religious leaders at the end of chapter 11. So they had gone to confront Jesus for his supposed authority, and he answered in such a way that they were left to be the ones who looked back. They didn't like that. They wanted him out of the picture. They wanted his influence gone. Then in Mark 12, Jesus gives a parable against them, and they realize that. Mark 12:12, they were seeking to arrest him, but feared the people, for they perceived that he told the parable against them. So they left him and went away. And what they do instead of a full frontal assault is they send these questioners trying to ruin his reputation around him. But they've greatly underestimated Jesus. He, the Son of God, is not going to be tricked. In fact, the religious leaders should have learned from that previous conversation, because Jesus is the one that's going to expose them, not the other way around. So let's look back at verses 13 and 17. Let's see how Jesus rebukes some hypocrites. And let's start by seeing how they try to trap him. So they try to trap him, and Jesus is not going to let that happen. And the end result is that he rebukes them. Verses 13 and 14, here's the trap. Again, the religious group, the Sanhedrin, the religious leaders, organizing different people to come and question Jesus. And so when you see in verse 13, and they sent to him, some of the Pharisees and some of the Herodians, the they there is the Sanhedrin, religious leaders. Mark identifies their purpose in verse 13. These men approached Jesus to trap him. If we look down at verse 15, we see that Jesus knew their hypocrisy as they asked the question. We'll come back to the concept of hypocrisy, but clearly we see in the passage that Jesus knows these men are not sincere as they approach him. If somebody approaches you and they have a question and they're not sincere, does that encourage you to engage in the conversation? Usually it doesn't. Now the Pharisees and the Herodians, just the mere fact that they approached Jesus probably tips it off to Jesus that there's a trap. Because these two groups of men are not the kind of groups that hung around and had coffee together. They didn't necessarily like each other. They had very different political views. The Herodians were those that supported those from the line of Herod, religious leaders. They would have been in favor of taxes. But with the party of the Pharisees, there were at least some in that group that were against paying taxes to Rome because they thought doing so supported idolatry. We're going to talk about that just briefly here. But you had very different men, very different views of the world, very different outlooks on the specific issue of taxes. And so by showing up to talk to Jesus, it was probably obvious that there was a trap just by the very nature that these two very different groups were trying to work together. If Jesus answered one way, it would make one group happy but the other one upset, and vice versa. But in a way, don't we do the same thing? You get in an argument with somebody, or maybe children get in an argument, they run to a parent, both wants to present their case so that the parent can rule into the matter, and whatever the parent says, one person's going to be happy, the other's going to be disappointed, or possibly, if the parent gives a particularly skillful answer, both are unhappy, or both are, but that's how it goes. We handle the situations very similar. A supervisor, a parent, you go to the authority to plead your case. But in our text, it isn't a matter of them going to authority. They don't believe Jesus is the authority. Their purpose is solely to get him in trouble. Perhaps we can also relate to the story that Jesus had to face people trying to trap him because of his message. I'm sure that some of you can think of examples when people, knowing that you claim to be a Christian, try to bring a situation to you just to make you look bad, just to trap you. They think that there's some inconsistency in the Bible and they want to reveal that as they ask you a question. Now, some might be genuine. They want to know what the Bible says or how a Christian thinks. An example of a genuine question would be down in verse 28. We're going to get to that, Lord willing, in the coming weeks. But many others just want to make you uncomfortable. They know you're a Christian. They want to embarrass you. They want to trap you in your words. And so I would just remind you briefly that people were doing this to Jesus long, long ago. If you get frustrated every once in a while, here's somebody else coming along, trying to make you look bad for being a follower of Christ, at least take comfort in knowing that you're actually following in the footsteps of Christ in those moments. He faced those kinds of critics as well. And God can work through those situations. But look at these men, what these men first say to Jesus. Teacher, we know that you are true and do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances, but truly teach the way of God. Now, here's the unnerving reality. If these words came from a true follower of Christ, It'd be fantastic. This is a good statement. It's a solid statement. Would we deny anything that they say here? Jesus is not swayed by somebody's opinion. He's not swayed by somebody's appearance. He truly teaches the way of God, and he's a true man. He's a man of integrity. These things are all true. But the unearthing reality is that these men don't believe it. They say this, but they don't mean it. Instead of being encouraged by these words, we are chilled by them. Why? If they really believe that Jesus is from God, they wouldn't be laying a trap for him. If they really believe he's true, then they would not, as verse 12 shows, be part of a plot to arrest him. Even though these men don't mean these statements in verse 14 sincerely, it's still the case that Jesus is true. It's still the case that he's not swayed by the opinions or appearances of others. He truly does teach the way of God. One of the amazing things about this passage is that these men go to Jesus claiming he is impartial. They claim that he teaches the way of God, but they care nothing for what he teaches. And despite their false claims and devious plans, what does Jesus do? Well, he teaches the way of God impartially. He does exactly what they claim to expect from him. What they didn't foresee is the power of the truth that he was going to speak. You might be intimidated by the possibility that someone you know could trap you like this. They can be intimidating because how do you prepare for a finely worded question that you don't know ahead of time? Somebody can think through a week or a month of how am I going to track this Christian, and you have no idea what exact area they're going to question you on. How can you be ready to defend the more difficult teaching and ramifications of the whole entire Bible? And I tell you two things. First, as we consider this passage, keep in mind that you are not Jesus. People, including the enemies of Jesus, are in awe of his answer here, and we should be too. He gives an answer that is preeminently fitting and powerful. Your answers might not always astound your accusers. You might give an answer that you think is very fitting. But instead of the response in our passage where they're just kind of dumbstruck and have nothing to say, your critics might have plenty to say after you speak. But be encouraged. God has not called you to astound those who throw mud on the name of God. But he might have decided that you'll suffer for righteousness' sake. You don't need a new, original answer. In fact, Jesus does not give an original answer here either, as we'll see soon. Instead, this is the second thing I'll tell you if you're in a spot needing to defend difficult teaching from the Bible. First, you're not Jesus. Keep that in mind. And so your answer might not be as astounding as his. But secondly, point to the clear teaching of Scripture. Jesus goes to give truth, which these men cannot debate. He goes to the truth. Truth is powerful. They say, but don't believe that Jesus is true. People can say things against you that they don't really believe either. But as you stand on the truth of God's word, and as you point to the God who has always been, is, and always will be, the power of truth is on your side, because God is true and God is powerful. So the second thing I'd say is let God's truth be what fights back when you're in those kinds of moments. Point to Scripture. Believe that what God has given is powerful. These men don't realize that what they say of Jesus here actually reflects, in part, how he is far superior to who they are. They have neither God nor truth on their side. Perhaps they look more powerful as they approach Jesus, but our Lord was not intimidated by them, and they will soon in this conversation be leveled by the Son of God. So let's look at this trap that they lay for Jesus. They ask, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay them or should we not? And let's get a little clarity on the issue they're talking about first. This is a specific tax that they bring up. It's called a poll tax. And a poll tax is not based on a person's income, it's based on where that person lives. So if these people lived in Judea, then they owed the same tax that every other person who lives in Judea owes. Jesus would not have been responsible to pay this tax. He was in Galilee under one of the Herods, and that Herod was then responsible to pay Rome. But in Judea, a place directly under Roman rule, those in Jerusalem had to pay this tax directly to the Romans, something which many of them don't like. Now, by lawful, when they say, is it lawful to pay this tax? They're not asking according to Roman law. They're asking according to the law of the Old Testament. We would ask the question like this: is it biblical to pay taxes to the government or not? And asking the question, is it biblical, can be a very good question. But again, one problem was they weren't sincere, and another problem was that, this is a while ago now, back in Mark 7, verses 6 to 8, Jesus highlights that the Jews put too much emphasis on tradition. When they ask, is it lawful? Their authority is not only the Old Testament as we know it today, but also the tradition that had been from that, the other teachings of man. Jesus is not going to run to tradition, but he will base his answer upon God's truth. All this being said, the men do happen upon an important concern. They're talking about paying taxes to Caesar. Now, which Caesar was this when they asked the question? It was the second Caesar, the second man to serve as emperor of the Roman Empire, a man called Tiberius Caesar. He ruled from the years 14 to 37. Now, he did not claim to be divine. He did not claim to be a god. But if you would have taken the coin that they're going to talk about, a denarius, and looked at that coin, there would have been an abbreviated form of this phrase: Tiberius Caesar Augustus, son of the divine Augustus. So there was the claim, at least on the coinage that Rome made, that Tiberius was the son of a god, the first emperor. If you flipped the coin over and looked on the other side, there would have been a picture of Tiberius' mother with the inscription, High Priest. Do you think many Jews would have appreciated being able to use a coin like this? No. And so there was a real concern that even the very existence of these coins was something that was idolatrous, false god. Maybe that helps us at least understand why some Jews would consider whether they should even use these coins. They claim to believe in the one true God, and the very wording on the denarius was opposed to the teaching of Scripture. So the Pharisees and the Herodians have laid the trap. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? If Jesus affirms it's necessary to pay the poll tax, his popularity and support from the people around him would be hurt. And that's really the goal of these men. Help the masses around Jesus not to look to him with so much respect and trust. They want to be able to arrest Jesus, so discredit him in front of the crowd. But if he teaches that paying the tax is wrong, then these men could alert the authorities and cause Jesus to be in trouble with the political rulers. So they think they have him in a catch-22. Sometimes we as followers of Jesus will be in difficult positions where our answers to specific questions could cause us either to lose trust with some or to be in trouble with our government. But Jesus does not simply allow these men to trap him. Angering one of these groups, the Pharisees or the Herodians, is not necessary in this instance. Instead, Jesus responds with condemning truth in verses 15 to 17. As he replies to these men, he replies knowing that they're being hypocritical. Now, what does it mean that he knows their hypocrisy? He knows that they're just putting on a show. They're pretending. What they're saying, they don't really believe. They don't believe he's true. They don't believe that he teaches the true way of God. And because they're willing to say this but not believe it, Are they trying to trick Jesus? I don't think so. But then who are they trying to fool? Well, they're trying to fool the crowd around Jesus. Pharisees actually had a fair amount of respect from the normal, everyday Jew in that time. And so I don't know that the people around Jesus would have all automatically suspected that the Pharisees might not mean what they're saying. They're trying to trick the masses, the crowd. Their focus, though, is on themselves. They're not living for an audience of one. They're not living for God. They're living for themselves. And to continue getting what they want, they must control and manipulate the people, the everyday people like the ones who are following Jesus. Now, Jesus sees through these men, but sadly, many around him don't. They're fooled. The sheep see other sheep, not realizing that these men are, in truth, wolves. So why does Jesus put up with this kind of trickery? Why does he play along and answer? Why doesn't he just walk away? I would actually say he doesn't put up with their trickery, and he doesn't play along. At this point, I tend to think it's not so much for the sake of these men that Jesus answers. I don't think that his primary target here in the conversation is the Pharisees and the Herodians. I think Jesus answers primarily in order to protect those around him. He answers skillfully to reveal the hypocrisy of these men. And by doing that, he can continue leading those around him. He knows, what does he answer? He knows that hypocrisy is dangerous to God's people. Even the first question that Jesus asks in response shows he's not going to play along with these men. Why put me to the test? Hopefully that is at least a small way to alert those around him that this is not a genuine situation. But notice what he does next. He takes control of what's happening. And how does he do that? He says, "Bring me a denarius and let me look at it." You might see it in your Bible, a note explaining that a denarius was a coin, that the value of which was equal to a day of work for a normal laborer. You work one day in the fields, you get a denarius. A day's paid to the everyday blue-collar employee. There's something that Jesus is communicating by this command. See, he doesn't have a denarius to pull out. Why does that matter? Well, some in this group of men questioning Jesus might not even believe it's right to use that kind of coin because of the idolatry that's inscribed on it. Augustus was not divine, and Tiberius' mother was not a true high priest. So the very existence of these coins in Jewish lands was an offense to some of these people. But Jesus doesn't even have the coin on him. Instead, he asks these men questioning him for a coin so that he can look at it. And there's some irony in that request and that really command that he gives. They have one available, probably one of the Herodians, I don't know. But they pull out this coin so that he can look at it and ask a question. And he continues to control the conversation by saying, "Whose likeness and inscription is this?" Of course, the answer is Caesar's. These coins show the authority that Caesar holds. They're not simply worth a specific financial amount, they also represent the authority of the Roman Empire and Caesar himself. And this brings us to the amazing part of Jesus, how Jesus answers here. Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. If the word render is not one that you often use, you could use the word give or pay, and that'd be a fitting translation as well. But it wouldn't quite be enough to carry the whole importance of this word. It does not simply mean give, but it carries the idea of give back. This is part of the genius of how Jesus is answering the question. But you say, what do you mean, give back? Well, who is it that has established this peace in the area? It's a forced peace, recognize that, Pax Romana. But who has established the peace of the area? It's the Romans. Who has troops around to keep the other enemies away? It's the Romans. Who has established a safe place, a safe region for trading to boom and for economies to be stable? Now, the Israelites would quickly stand up and say, we don't want them. We don't want their peace that they bring. But at the end of the day, they're benefiting in different ways from the Romans. And as that is the case, they have an obligation to give back to that government. All these coins are minted by the Roman Empire and used according to its laws. The use of them is dictated by the government. Despite the sinful aspects of the Roman government, and without doubt it was not a godly government, Jesus still upholds the authority that they have. There are Jews living in Judea and living under Roman rule. They're responsible to the Roman government as their authority. So as this government is a legitimate government in God's eyes, they have the right to require money from those under their charge. In other words, these men, if they are from Judea, have the duty to pay their taxes to Caesar. The Apostle Paul takes the instruction even further when he says in Romans 13, verses 1 and 7, let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. And pay to all what is owed to them. Taxes to whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, honor to whom honor is owed. But it's interesting that in this situation here, Jesus is not this specific. In other words, Paul gives more detail than Jesus does. But remember, Jesus is not dealing with a friendly audience. He replies, but he leaves the answer more vague, and further revelation then helps us from men like Paul as they speak to the issues of some governmental questions. Now, to explain further, would each of these men who hears Jesus' question, would they have answered the same way? See, here's part of the genius of Jesus' question to them, or his response, I should say. Render to Caesar what is Caesar's. If you went down the line and asked the Herodians what that meant, would they have answered the same way that the Pharisees would have answered? No. But the reality is that neither one of them could argue with the logic that Jesus was using. These coins are under Caesar's jurisdiction. What ruler of that day wouldn't see it as his right to charge taxes to those under him? This is one of those benefits that come to those who are ruling. Even still, Jesus gives them no place even to get a foothold, and that's largely due to the second half of his statement in verse 17. Render to God the things that are God's. Now, notice how Jesus, as he is the one controlling this conversation, is not willing to keep this simply at the level of human government and taxes. In his reply, he gives a much broader call. In some ways, his words here seem similar to his rebuke of Peter back in Mark 8:33. He said to Peter there, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." These men, in their pursuit of trapping Jesus, are not thinking big enough. As they ask what is lawful, they're not really asking what God desires concerning taxes. They are, after all, pretending to care about what Jesus has to say. They're instead man-centered. They're not placing their minds on the things of God. Now, to be clear, these men did not ask Jesus what they owed to God. After all, as Mark shows throughout the book, they don't care about serving the one true God. But Jesus is not bound to what these men have asked. He is, again, seeking to expose their hypocrisy. These coins had the likeness or the image of Caesar. Yet there's something more fundamental here. See, in whose likeness are we made? Genesis 1:27 speaks clearly to this. It says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them." Israelites were to give back to Caesar what was due. Even more importantly, all people are to give back to God what is due to him. As he made us in his image, we are in our very lives and pursuits ultimately to answer to him. Jesus, in this situation, points people back to the likeness in which they are. Render to Caesar what is Caesar, and to God what is God's. Caesar's image is on that coin. Recognize that he has some authority here. God's image is on us. He has authority over us. Jews in this time did not like the Romans and how they occupied the land. We in our time might have a hard time with aspects of our government. We should, after all, our government support some ungodly and sinful aspects of our society. But still, we are responsible to our government. To a greater extent, our neighborhoods, our economy, our nation, and our very planet can only exist because of God himself. He is the one who sustains the universe by the word of his power. It's through him that all things came to be. By his very words, he brought creation into existence. Many today claim they owe God nothing. It's a sad irony, though, as Romans 1:19 and 20 teaches that when it comes to those who are ungodly and unrighteous. For what can be known about God is plain to them because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made. So they are without excuse. After Jesus says what he says, the Pharisees and Herodians know better than to try to argue at this point. Remember their mission. They are there to trap Jesus. What's the effect of this reply from him, though? He quite skillfully shuts them down. See, under the radiance of truth, darkness becomes plain to all. As these men want to trap Jesus, and as some of the religious leaders even want to destroy him, these words from him point back to Genesis 1:27. Some within the religious leaders dared to plan his murder. They dared to take the very life of Jesus. They dared to kill one made in the image of God. What can such hypocrisy do in the face of this truth from Jesus? It can but stand and be amazed, and they marveled at him. As a black light will reveal clearly the blood on the hands of the man who stabbed another, so the answer from Jesus has revealed the sinful hearts of these men. They can offer no reply. We've just covered a mere 5 verses in the book of Mark, but I hope you are encouraged with what we find in the truth that keeps hitting me from this passage. Is the first we're going to cover when it comes to theological truths. Here's the first statement. Truth is powerful. These men tell Jesus that they know he is true and truly teaches the way of God. They say that, but they don't mean it. They're being hypocritical. It really makes me wonder what they thought the motivations of Jesus were. Hey, Mr. Pharisee, what do you think Jesus is really trying to do here? They don't believe him. Of course, we can't get into their minds in that way. I don't think it's a whole lot different than how some might speak to me today. Look, Pastor, I know you're sincere and you mean what you say. You want to teach the truth of the Bible as you see it. Or people might know you're a genuine person and as a result open up about some difficult situations they're facing. Hopefully they know that you care, that they can feel comfortable talking to you about life. But the reality is that many people I will meet and you will meet outside these walls don't believe that the Bible is true. You might have some measure of respect from them. But their dependence, their trust is not in the Bible. They don't believe that it is a true book from God. Knowing this can make it hard for us sometimes. In fact, it can test our faith. But God doesn't need someone to believe in the Bible for it to be powerful. His word just is powerful. A finely forged and honed knife doesn't need someone to believe it is dangerous for it to be dangerous. In fact, it can be even more dangerous to the person who does not respect its sharp edges and pointed tip. What is the powerful truth in this passage? It stops the hypocrites in their tracks. Ultimately, they are to give to God the things that are God's. There's power in that truth. Some of you are wrestling possibly with this truth even now. Some of you might not even believe it yet. But that doesn't mean that it's easy for you to dismiss, and it doesn't mean it's not true. You cannot change truth that relates to who God is and how He has created the world. You were made in the image of God. You bear His likeness. What does that mean? Well, in brief, God made us like Him in some distinct ways. Not in every way, but in several ways. And as He did that, He made us different than the rest of creation. And He inherently placed in us greater value. The life of a human being holds greater value than any other life in this physical world. Why? Because God made us in His image. And as a result, human life is precious. You know this to be the case. But not only is human life precious, human life is ultimately the work of God. And as we are made in God's image, it most certainly is true that we are God's creation. And as we are God's creation, we owe our very existence to Him. So when Jesus says that these men are to give to God the things that are God's, this truth strikes them to their core. Their lives are not their own. They are responsible, just as we are, to live life God's way. With amazing wisdom, Jesus gives the truth and He lets it sink in. A well-made, sharp razor will not need a person to do the work of shaving. In fact, if someone is using a dull razor and applies greater pressure, that person can actually do harm to their skin. Here's my call to you. Trust in the power of the Word of God. Trust in the effectiveness of the Word of God. Trust in the power of truth from God. Now, yes, there's also the matter of growing in the skill to be able to use the Word of God, to apply the right passage to the right situation. And I hope we're all working to grow in that. Jesus gave us a truly masterful example of wisely applying the truth of God's Word and of setting up these men to hear it. But where do you start? You start by believing that God's truth, as it is from God, is therefore powerful as God is powerful. The effectiveness of the Word of God does not depend on your power. It depends on one whose power is infinitely greater than yours. And yet there's times that we doubt it. There's times that we question whether that spoken word can, through the Spirit of God, bring life to the soul. Can confront the critic. Jesus does not physically corner these men, but He lets the truth do that. He does not shove them up against the wall, but the truth still takes their breath away. You won't always see the effects of God's truth on another person, but trust that in the speaking of God's Word, in the speaking of the truth from God, there's great power. And as you speak it, the Holy Spirit can now take what you have said and use those very words and those very truths in such ways that maybe in years to come, eventually, God can bring visible change. Truth is powerful. But I want to turn into a practical suggestion here. Because the reality is some of us are greatly intimidated with the possibility that another person might corner us and ask us about the faith. So a practical suggestion, if nothing else, if you're put on the spot for your faith, if you're put on the spot to defend Scripture, if nothing else, point others to the hope that you have from God. If nothing else, point others to the hope that God has given to you. First, you must have a settled conviction that the Bible truly is God's Word, and that God's claim to this being a living and powerful Word is true. If you do not trust in the truth of God's Word, you will fail in those moments when others corner. Trust in God's Word. After all, Hebrews 4:12 and 13 says, "For the Word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to the division of soul and of spirit, of joints and of marrow, and discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart. And no creature is hidden from His sight, but all are naked and exposed to the eyes of Him to whom we must give account." You, believer, must believe what God says about his word. Let me also direct your attention to 1 Peter 3, 13 to 17. You can turn there if you'd like. It's a little bit longer of a passage. And your responsibility is not to be ready to answer every conceivable question that anybody on earth might ask about the Bible and the Christian faith. Instead, be ready to point to what God has done in you to give you true, lasting hope. You probably know a fair amount of people who make no claim to be trusting in Christ. What kind of hope do they have? As you know Christ, what kind of hope do you have? These verses in 1 Peter, starting in verse 13 of chapter 3. These verses say, "Now who is there to harm you if you are zealous for what is good? But even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you will be blessed. Have no fear of them, nor be troubled, but in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. But do it with gentleness and respect, having a good conscience, so that when you are slandered, those who slander your good behavior in Christ may be put to shame. For it is better to suffer for doing good, if that should be God's will, than for doing evil." When people try to trap you, it's okay if you don't have a great answer. A perfect answer, a fantastic answer. Just take comfort in being able to suffer as Jesus suffered and point to the hope that God has placed in your heart. Trust that God can take His powerful word delivered through your words and your life as you point others to what Jesus has done for you. At the end of the day, these hypocrites in Mark 12 aren't on the side of God's truth. At the end of the day, it's not your wisdom, it's not your logic, it's not your witty answer that will get the win for God. It's His truth. Give others the truth, and as you do so, share the hope that God has given to you. The powerful light of Scripture is such that darkness cannot stand against it. I have two more shorter truths to share with you. The first of these is that we are responsible. I think we have to get back to this. The main point, I believe, in verses 13 to 17 of Mark 12 is seeing the God that Jesus has in truth, and the truth that God has established. But we need to deal with, to some extent, the governmental questions that come up. So we are responsible, just to make clear, we are responsible to human government. Jesus clearly teaches that citizens, even of a corrupt human government, still have responsibility to that government. We have a president right now that in so many ways dishonors God. His arrogance at times scares me to my core. It should scare you. A national leader saying the kind of proud, pompous statements that he does. One who represents us as a nation, bragging to the other nations. Should scare you. But he's still our president. There are things that we are to give him, like respect and prayer for him. There are some in our government who support the murder of unborn children, but this does not mean that we throw off the government in this country. There are ways that our tax money is used sinfully, but we're still responsible to pay taxes. The answer from Jesus in this passage doesn't answer all of our questions about God. But neither does it free us from the human government that rules over us. And that's hard, isn't it? It's hard to be faithful and to submit and obey God's word and to have others making choices for us that we would never, ever make. And yet, that is what Jesus teaches here. That's what further New Testament teaching shows us. So let us submit to the Word of God and trust in the one who is just and will one day make all things right. we are responsible to God, our Maker. We're responsible to God. Psalm 24 seems a very fitting place to end here. You're welcome to turn over there too if you'd like, verses 1 to 6. I'll read that in just a second here. I love how much this passage helps us end our morning in God's Word. And really, this passage combines so well, fits so well with what we've covered. Psalm 24, starting in verse 1. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein, for he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the rivers. Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord, and who shall stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who does not lift up his soul to what is false and does not swear deceitfully. He will receive blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. Such is the generation of those who seek him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob. Has God yet applied to you the cleansing work of forgiveness? Has he granted you the righteousness of Christ? Has he given you a heart that loves him and loves others? Would you stand before the one true God one day, in his presence, in his holy place? God is the one who holds your life. He is the one who has authority over your life. Don't run from those statements. Because of the death of Jesus Christ, the righteous one, all who believe in him and accept him as Savior, the one who died in their place before the holy God, to all those who believe in him, God gives forgiveness and righteousness. He saves from all eternity and grants eternal life. We are responsible to the one true God. Believe in the salvation he has provided through Christ. Then go on to live his way. Give back to God the things that are God's.